Okay, we're going to tie an Irresistible, and I'm going to tie this in a size 14. I'm going to use Snowshoe Rabbit's Foot for the wings instead of calf tail. Calf tail is certainly what I would normally use. This is some moose mane here. I'm going to use it for the tails. I cut off a few hairs unless I want 10 or 11 or so. There's about 10 there. And I'll cut those off a little shorter, put them in my stacker here, even up the tips, trim them again, measure them against the hook shank. One wrap to get them on there, the next wrap pulls them up on top. The first wrap was a nice loose one. Make this wrap right underneath the hair, helps flare it up and wrap back up. Trim off these ends at about the midpoint and wrap them down. Check the tail length. It's a little bit long, but if you ever make a mistake on the tail, make it a little long, I say. So I'm going to wrap back here and get some deer body hair and spin the body. And what I'm going to do is clean all the fluff out of the bottom of this and then cut a very short length of hair to spin. Short enough so in this size 14 hook, it can spin without catching on the point of the hook. Even the butt ends up, trim off those tips, take this short stack here, 2 light wraps around it, like I let go and pull. But those wraps were so light that I could let go of that and I didn't have any tension on it. The thread was just holding it in place. And to make those wiggle wraps all the way through, pushing the hair to the back all the time while I'm wrapping through it. And then use my scissor points like this to back it up a little. And then my secret weapon, this piece of cardboard that I cut 2 little slots in. And I put that on to hold the hairs back and then wrap back to it. And it gives me a nice starting point for my next clump. Trim that off the same way. Take that short clump. I'm just going to do the same thing. I pull it into place. Two light wraps around it. Let go and pull. And then wrap through, pushing back with my thread all the time, trying to push that back, and then wrap forward to secure my thread. Push that back, use my scissor points again. Going to get my trusty piece of cardboard. If you spin real small clumps, you may have to do a third one. I don't have room here for another clump, so I'm going to live with these 2. See how little space there is left on that half base, half wrapped shank base that I had. There's not enough room there to do another one. So I'll wrap forward and then make a thread base underneath here. Push this back and wrap right up against the base of the body. Make sure that those stay back, and then come back to about 2 eye sizes back and let my thread hang. And take these long scissors I got from Renzetti. I really like them. The points are real sharp, even though they're almost 6 inches long. And it lets me keep my fingers out of the way of the camera when I'm doing nipping like this in front of the camera. I usually use a double-edged razor blade that I've broken and only have a single edge on, and shave it down with that. So this is a rabbit's foot. I'm going to break one of the toes off here and use the hair in between the toe and the heel. This is kind of the mid-knuckle point of it. It's fairly long hair, and you can get a good clump of it here. And I'm using Snowshoe Rabbit's Foot instead of the regular calf tail for this, because the Snowshoe Rabbit's Foot gives a better silhouette when it's tied in these small sizes. Now, even up those tips as best I can. Hold the tips and clean as much of the underfur out as I can. This is real fine hair, but to get a clump this size, you still build up quite a body. I measured that against the length of the shank, and I pull it into place and fasten it down with a couple good tight wraps. Wrap back up, pull it forward, back, and wrap against it, really locking it in. Now I can trim, and I tried to leave myself enough room to get in here and trim, and use the rotary feature of the vise to be able to rotate and trim all the way around this instead of pulling it all up and trying to cut it all in one clump. This is so small and you have so little room to wrap these ends down that you don't want to build up a big amount of bulk, and you want to be able to tighten right down to the base that's underneath it. So I've got that trimmed out pretty well, and you can see how thick this has made my body tying this in. I will pay a penalty for that. I'll show it to you later. It just makes the hackle too big. Okay, now I've wrapped this down. I've got it quite secure. And I'm going to just make a few wraps in front and start building up a thread bed in front, because there's going to be such a step down from the thread bed on the body to the front if I don't build up some in front, that I just have to do that. Then I fold those back and divide those and bring my thread to the rear so I can come from the back to the front and divide it with my figure-8 type wraps, that one wing, and now I'll post it. Couple wraps to post it, a locking wrap, and divide this other one and post it. Bend them both back and wrap right up against the base of them. Again, intentionally building up the head of this so that it's closer to the diameter of the wing butts that are tied down behind the wing there. So get back here. I'm going to get a couple of hackle feathers. These are off a saddle hackle. I'm going to strip more off what's going to be the bottom that wraps against the hook shank. I'm going to tie these in, pull some of that up, and you'll be able to see that bare stem wrap here in a minute. I'll secure this down. I have the shiny side of the feathers facing to the front when I start wrapping. They're facing up right now. When I start wrapping, they'll go to the front. I secure this down and then make a single wrap whip finish here so that I can put this in the cradle and I don't have to worry about my thread ever coming off the cradle. Make sure my hackle stems didn't get twisted. Stroke them together and smooth them down, and I'll start wrapping, and you can see the bare stem that I took and stripped the quills off of that started to wrap there. 3 wraps or so behind. Pull the wing back, hold it back while I wrap up in front of it and transition to the front. That slipped down a little bit. I'm going to unwrap here. That popped down. There we go. And 2, almost 3 wraps in the front. 3 in back, 2 in front. Secure those off and tie them, and you'll have a finished Irresistible in a size 14, and it's not as hard as a lot of people think it is. It's actually, as they get bigger, some of them get harder, but the problem is, you look at these wings, got a couple fibers there, get rid of them. You look at these wings, they look not too bad. Oh, my last wrap of the hackles, I caught a couple fibers. I'll get rid of them with a pair of tweezers. But anyway, these wings don't look too bad, but they really aren't tall enough. They're the right size. They're size 14 wings. I measured them. The hackle is the right length. It's size 14 hackle. I measured it. The problem is that thick body that I had. And so those wings, they're almost passable, but when you turn and look at it head on, you can see they're a little too short. Either it looks like the hackle's too long or the wings are too short. Here's one that's tied with size 16 hackle. It's a 14 fly, but I use size 16 hackle, and the wings stand up like they should. So there you have it. There's an Irresistible tied using rotary fly tying techniques.